After 2 weeks of searching for 3 abducted Israeli teens, Israel releases the names of the wanted kidnappers, Marwan Kawasme and Amar Abu Aisha, both members of Hamas who served in Israeli jails in the past. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry holds crisis talks with Gulf states on Iraq as Iran and the U.S. ramp up their presence in the country. And the group stage of the World Cup in Brazil ends tonight, and so far the tournament has had the highest goal per game average since 1970. Welcome back to the news today. This is the Daily Debate. Well, Israeli security forces have searched for 2 weeks now for the 3 kidnapped teenagers, and it seems that they're no closer to being found than when the search began, despite the release of the identities of the suspected kidnappers today. Well, besides the search, the kidnapping also launched Israel into a full-scale crackdown on Hamas in the West Bank. Well, joining me tonight is Colonel in the Reserves, Erez Winner, former assistant to the IDF Chief of General Staff, and Dr. Ghassan Abdullah, director of the Center for Applied Research and Education. Thank you both for joining us. We've been covering this extensively now for 2 weeks, this ongoing security operation to find the teens, the simultaneous crackdown on Hamas across the West Bank. Both of these issues have raised a lot of questions now in 2 weeks. As today, just before the broadcast here, the names of these suspected, perhaps kidnappers, actually we don't know how they could be tied, but the identities of these 2 prime suspects have been released, yet there doesn't seem to be any closer. We don't seem to be any closer to actually finding the teens now. I'd like to start with you, Colonel Vienna here. Do we know anything about perhaps the whereabouts of these kidnappers or more about who they are?
Well, we know a lot about who they are and where they're coming from and the relationship with the Hamas movement that Israel has claimed from the first day that they are behind the kidnapping. We don't know yet where they are, and that's more or less the whole operation in the West Bank is about. Unfortunately, they also learn from lessons of their friends and colleagues who were arrested by attempting kidnapping in the past, and they take very good precautions. Sooner or later, history and our knowledge tells us that they will be caught. We hope it's going to be sooner than later.
Well, speaking of sooner rather than later, and it's a question I want to hear from both of you about, but at this point, 2 weeks now, as the IDF has been really relentlessly searching for them, is there a point that we may reach soon where the political price for this operation outweighs the gains that we're making on the ground, that the IDF makes on the ground? What's your feeling on that?
Well, thank you, first of all, and let me start by telling you that there is one thing that I am personally sure of. There is something certain about the latest news, which is that all the allegations made against the Palestinian leadership has become known that this is not true at all, because the Palestinian leadership and the Palestinian security groups are the ones who helped in identifying who is disappearing and who is not disappearing. This is one thing. Second thing, let us start together by praying that all the 3 Israeli people will come back to their homes safe. And let us also hope that the 2 governments, mainly the Israeli government, will learn from this unpleasant experience that it's not violence, it's not the military power, it's only through negotiations and it's only through peace talks that we can end violence in the area. 2 weeks of searching, 2 weeks of intensive efforts, 2 weeks of terrorizing people, 2 weeks of unstable psychological conditions for the Israeli families and for the Palestinian families, and did not yield to anything. So I can assure you the only approach for the Israeli government and for the Palestinian leadership, and the Palestinian leadership has approved this, is through negotiations and through peace talks.
But there have been no demands made yet. What type of negotiation could take place at this point?
I mean the political negotiations to end the occupation of the West Bank and to end the closure of Gaza. The siege of Gaza.
What are your feelings about this? That perhaps the IDF is reaching a point where the political cost may be too much for this operation?
I don't think that the political cost has anything to do with the operation in the field. I do think that what Israel is doing so far is not enough. And there is one hand running all the intelligence operation, which brought the names very fast. Less than a day after the kidnap, we knew the names of those two terrorists and their friends.
Who gave you the names?
Not the Palestinian Authority.
According to your security, according to your security sources, it is the Palestinian.
Well, I consider myself part of the security in Israel, even though it are reserves, not from the Palestinian. It was an Israeli security services operation. We knew the names very fast. We don't know where they are yet. The Palestinian police forces are helping for the time being in the field in one hand, but the Palestinian Authority, their leaders, their media are still pursuing more incitement and not exactly doing what you were claiming about talking negotiation and creating peace. And negotiation for the time being is not, but let me please finish. Negotiation is not what will change the equation right now. This whole thing's happened only very short while after Hamas and Fatah has declared unit government. So just negotiation and just talking, we all want peace, but peace is not going to come by talking about it, by doing. And Israel is doing, I think, part of the right things: intelligence, military operation in the area to find them, hopefully. And the other two steps that are still missing is one, hunting the Hamas, not just only in Judea and Samaria, but also in Gaza and in other parts of the world that they exist. And I think that the Palestinian people should, as long as it's not needed for a certain operation in the field, should go back to the normal life. We should give them more permits to go to work, to go to do whatever they want, especially for the holy Ramadan that is coming shortly.
Starts on Saturday.
On Saturday, day or one here or there. But not political issues should change any operational mood that Israel is doing now. I don't think that's what will happen.
Excuse me, just a very short comment. I am really surprised that you would like to justify that the government made between Fatah and Hamas is the cause of what's this
no, I didn't
going
say
on.
the coast. I say it didn't change.
It didn't change
the terror in the field. That's
okay,
what I said.
but what about the other procedures taken by the Israeli government? For example, when the Israeli government did not comply to what was agreed upon to release the 104
during negotiations, during the recent negotiations.
Secondly, passing the law
I think it was a mistake to do it in the first place.
Passing a law in the Knesset, and you remember, as you are part of the security forces, you remember what one of your highest security forces said during the negotiations to pass this law, that what about if Hamas kidnaps some Israelis, what we are going to do? And what about the intensive harassments and the daily violations by the Israeli settlers in the West Bank against the civilians and against the trees, against the mosques, against the churches?
Well,
didn't this flame the whole situation?
Writing some not nice things on a wall, or even cutting a tree, that I personally found it sad, you cannot compare it against terror, kidnapping teens, or firing.
Let's come back to the political and security dimension.
Let me tell you that we are against the kidnapping and we are against any terror event.
So we agree.
Okay?
Well, let's come back to these dimensions in a moment. For now, let's not forget that there is a personal dimension to this as well. And in London, I-24 News spoke with Asaf Ifrach, the brother of Eyal Ifrach, one of the kidnapped teens. Well, here's what he had to say about the ordeal of the last 2 weeks.
In recent days, we've been going through something extraordinary and unpredictable. We were not prepared for it at all, and it was really hard to deal with. When I found out about it, it was really hard to accept. As time goes on, I'm feeling stronger and feel that they are getting stronger with me.
Well, this entire saga, if you will, of these 2 weeks has definitely taken on a very personal dimension for the Israelis as well as the Palestinians.
Yes.
They've had their homes essentially turned upside down by this. But you've mentioned before, you hope that everyone returns alive from this.
Yes.
What is your feeling towards the sentiments by the Israeli families?
Yes, I do confess and admit that it's very difficult for him as a brother. It's very difficult for his mother. It's very difficult for his sisters and his father. At the same time, it's very difficult also for 5,000 fathers, 5,000 mothers, and tens of thousands of brothers whose brothers and sisters have been in Israeli jails, and mainly I'm talking about those administrative arrests.
But there's a difference there. They know the location of their brothers and sisters.
But they cannot visit them and see them.
But this is a situation
They are dying.
They
about
can
thousands.
visit them and they can see them.
This
and
is
they're
not all of them,
This is a
Michael.
situation
and
where
they're not-
16-year-olds are
and
missing.
they're not in jail because somebody decided they should go. They're in jail because something that they done.
The administrative
And
Through a legal
arrested
process.
people are just because they are suspected to be.
not suspected because the Israeli Security Service know what they did. In some occasions, you cannot bring the right evidence to court
So
in the way
according
you
to
want.
the Israeli law, why
But-
shouldn't they uncover to them?
But still, they
and to their
have.
lawyers?
Still, they see lawyers. Still, they have visits from their families.
in vain.
They eat. They drink. They read. They see. They even see the World Cup on
monitored
television.
by the International Red Cross as well.
Yeah.
A very different situation now. And I've
Yes.
heard many people equate the plight of Palestinian prisoners, which is certainly not a simple plight, to the plight of these three teenagers, two of whom were 16 years old, who have vanished off the face of the earth here with
Totally
no word to
against
anyone.
this. Totally against this. We are against this, equalizing between this and that. Okay. We would like our 5,000 brothers to be released as soon as possible, but not through practicing this aspect or practicing this type of work and behavior.
It seemed as if you were equating the situation here, as you mentioned, the 5,000 mothers and fathers.
Yes, it's very difficult for the whole Palestinian community. There are prisoners, my cousin, there are prisoners who have been in jail for 3 or even 4 decades. They are human beings. There are administrative prisoners, he knows, that they have been in jail for 5-6 years without being sentenced or given to a court to sentence them, without knowing why they are in jail.
They all know why they're in jail, and they all have all the right legal aspects and efforts, and they all eventually sitting in a place, eating, drinking, well-dressed,
Confiscating their freedom.
well-dressed, well-fed. They have relationship with their families. They know where they are. None of them is being abused or I don't know what else. So the comparing is hard, and I totally.
I'm not comparing.
No. It's it's very nice, and I think it's really human what you are saying, and that's true. But I don't think that there is any compare. Israel didn't went to arrest people because we have a spare place in our jails. Israel was under a terror attacks. Part of the defending ourselves from these terror attacks was arresting people. And maybe, I don't think you forgot, I certainly didn't, what happened here in Israel 10, 15 years ago when buses were bombed on the streets and malls, and you couldn't even walk on the street. And it's changed. It didn't change because the Palestinian stopped using terror. It changed because Israel has managed to break the bones of the terror organizations. And I don't say that all Palestinians are terrorists. I have many
another reason
Palestinians.
for change
Very
is the
short-
Palestinian
Very
Authority.
shortly, please,
Yes.
let me comment. I'd like you, first of all, to know that I'm not justifying the behavior of kidnapping, and at the same time, I'm not making comparison between the status of the Palestinian prisoners and the 3 kidnapped Israelis, because the motives for those 5,000 are totally different. I consider that those 5,000 Palestinian prisoners are fighters for freedom. You see, and
By using terror against civilian.
I'm telling you, I'm totally against
Those
any
convicted of murder.
form, any aspect of terror. I'm telling you this. Secondly, you mentioned that the terror events has declined because Israel managed to abolish the, let's call it the roots of terror. It might be possible. It might be possible, but there is another reason.
Telling you for personal.
I'm telling you, my cousin, I'm telling you another reason. It is because of the radical shift in the thinking of the Palestinians, either the Palestinian leadership or the Palestinian community. Why? Because we know the Palestinians, we have experienced and we have practiced military struggle, and we knew that it did not yield to achieve our ambitions and our aspirations. Now we adopted the peace and negotiation as a strategy and methodology.
Your final
This is
thoughts,
why
Colonel
it
Vina,
declined.
we're almost out of time here.
Well, I'm really happy to hear what you have to say, but the only problem is who is we? And when I'm talking, when
The
I'm
majority
looking,
of the Palestinians.
when I'm looking, the majority of the Palestinians, the people that I know and meet in the field every day, yes, but the leadership, and I'm talking also Abu Mazen and what you call the Fatah leadership. As long as they
Unfortunately, we're out of time here. Both of you, wonderful guests for us today. Colonel Erez Winner, thank you very much, and Dr. Ghassan Abdullah.
Thank you.
We
Thank you
both hope that they will be all three back home as safe as possible.
Absolutely. That wraps up our daily debate here on the news today. We'll be right back with One on One.